Lara paused at the entrance of the bustling airport terminal, her eyes scanning the massive electronic board for her flight details. With each flicker of the screen, a ripple of anxiety coursed through her. She clutched the handle of her suitcase tighter, a tangible reminder of the tangible step she was about to take toward a new beginning. Her hand drifted to her belly, rounded with the promise of new life, as she whispered a quiet promise to the tiny heartbeat pulsing within. "We're going to be just fine," she murmured. The check-in process was a blur of activity. Lara handed her passport to the attendant, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Destination?" the attendant asked, her tone professional yet distant. "Amsterdam," Lara replied, her voice a mix of determination and weariness. The attendant nodded, tagging Lara's luggage and handing her the boarding pass with a rehearsed smile. "Gate 23B. Boarding begins in 40 minutes. Congratulations, by the way," she added, nodding towards Lara's abdomen. Lara thanked her and made her way to security, her steps slow, burdened not just by her physical state, but by the emotional weight of the recent months. The lines were long, and the noise of the airport seemed to amplify her solitude. As she finally reached the front, she placed her belongings on the conveyor belt and walked through the metal detector, feeling exposed under the gaze of the security personnel. Once through, she reassembled her belongings with practiced efficiency and headed towards her gate. The walk was long, and the airport was alive with the chatter of excited tourists and the frantic pace of business travelers. Lara felt distinctly apart from them all, cocooned in her own world of introspection. Her hand rested again on her belly, a silent reassurance that she was not entirely alone. At the gate, Lara found a seat away from the bustling crowd near a large window overlooking the runway. Planes took off and landed with rhythmic regularity, each a symbol of departures and arrivals, endings and beginnings. Lara watched them, her mind wandering to the life she had left behind and the unknown that lay ahead. Her thoughts were interrupted by a family settling nearby, a mother, father, and two young children, bursting with excitement about their journey. Their laughter was a bittersweet reminder of the family Lara had hoped to build, now altered by her recent divorce. She turned her gaze back to the window, the planes now blurred by the tears welling in her eyes. As the boarding announcement echoed through the terminal, Lara gathered her strength and her belongings. She joined the queue, her boarding pass clutched tightly in her hand, as if it were a lifeline. As she moved slowly towards the plane, each step was a tentative dance between fear and hope. Upon entering the plane, Lara was greeted by a flight attendant with a warm, practiced smile. "Welcome aboard," the attendant said, directing her to her seat in the economy section. Lara nodded, managing a small smile as she made her way down the narrow aisle. Finding her seat by the window, Lara settled in, stowing her carry-on under the seat in front of her and buckling herself in. She leaned back, closing her eyes briefly, letting the hum of the aircraft soothe her frayed nerves. It was only when she felt the presence of someone by her side that she opened her eyes. A man, middle-aged with a stern expression, placed his briefcase in the overhead compartment before sitting next to her. He glanced at Lara, his gaze briefly taking in her condition before settling into his seat. Lara offered a polite nod, hoping for a quiet companion for the journey ahead. As the plane began its taxi to the runway, Lara looked out the window, her thoughts a tangled mix of fear and excitement. This was it, the beginning of a new chapter. She whispered to herself and to the life within her, "Here we go, little one. Let's start this adventure together." As the engines roared to life, her heart matched its rhythm, hopeful and scared all at once. Chapter 2. Unpleasant Encounter. Lara meets her seatmate, Thomas, who immediately starts complaining about the space she occupies. His demeaning comments set a tense tone for the flight. As the plane steadied into its ascent, the soft rumble of the engines provided a background hum that most found comforting. Lara, however, could find little comfort as she noticed her seatmate's growing restlessness. He was a middle-aged man with a stern expression that seemed etched into his features. After stowing his briefcase overhead, he took his seat next to Lara, immediately encroaching on the armrest with authoritative ease. Thomas glanced at Lara with a critical eye, noting her pregnant state with a slight frown. As he settled in, he made no effort to contain his displeasure. "I really hoped for a bit more space on this long flight," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for Lara to hear. Lara shifted uncomfortably, trying to make herself smaller in her seat. "I'm sorry if I'm taking up too much space," she murmured, her voice tinged with anxiety. Her polite apology, however, seemed to ignite rather than soothe Thomas's annoyance. "It's not just about space," Thomas scoffed, turning towards her as he adjusted his own seatbelt. "It's about comfort, mine and everyone else's. You should have considered booking 2 seats or flying at a different time." Lara bit her lip, feeling a sting at his words. She turned her gaze to the window, hoping to escape into the passing clouds, but Thomas wasn't done. "I mean, it's not just an inconvenience for me, you know. It's about everyone around having to accommodate." Her hands tightened around her seat as she fought the urge to respond harshly. Instead, she took a deep breath, her voice soft but firm. "I understand. I'll do my best to keep to my space. Thank you for your understanding." Her measured response did little to quell Thomas's mood. "Well, doing your best might not be enough on a full flight like this," he retorted, his voice carrying a mix of sarcasm and irritation. Before Lara could reply, a flight attendant approached, her smile practiced but her eyes observant. "Is everything all right here?" she asked, her tone neutral yet carrying an undercurrent of authority. Thomas straightened in his seat, his tone shifting as he addressed the attendant. "Yes, fine," he said, a fake smile plastering his face, "just making conversation." The attendant gave Lara a questioning look, to which Lara nodded slightly, not wanting to escalate the situation. "Thank you," Lara said quietly to the attendant, who nodded and moved on, her steps brisk and purposeful. As the attendant walked away, Thomas leaned back in his seat, his gaze fixed on the screen in front of him, his demeanor cooling into a silent truce. Lara, meanwhile, felt her heart rate slowly return to normal, her attention drifting to the documentary she had paused earlier. The voices from the screen spoke of challenges and triumphs, drawing her into stories of resilience that felt both distant and familiar. The film featured a segment on a charismatic entrepreneur known for his innovative approach to social issues. A man whose face was obscured, leaving his identity a mystery but his deeds well noted. As Lara watched, she felt a spark of inspiration, a reminder of the possibilities that lay beyond the current discomfort. Yet, even as she tried to immerse herself in the stories unfolding on the screen, the weight of Thomas's words lingered, casting a shadow over her initial excitement. She would need to find a way to navigate this journey, each mile taking her further from her past and closer to the uncertain yet hopeful future. As the documentary played on, Lara's thoughts were momentarily distracted by the slight turbulence shaking the cabin, a physical reminder of the unpredictability of her path forward. As the plane hits turbulence, so does Lara's emotional state. Thomas's harsh words continue, adding stress to her already fragile state. The aircraft began to shudder, a low vibration that grew more pronounced, mirroring the tension that had settled between Lara and Thomas. As the seatbelt sign flickered on, a gentle chime echoed through the cabin, prompting the passengers to secure themselves. Lara clicked her seatbelt shut with a click that sounded far too loud in her own ears, her nerves already frayed from the earlier encounter. Thomas, seemingly oblivious to Lara's discomfort, continued to fidget restlessly. He glanced at the window, then at Lara, his irritation palpable. "This is just perfect," he grumbled, his voice laced with sarcasm. "First, cramped quarters, now this shaking. It's going to be a long flight." Lara tried to focus on the calming blue of the sky outside her window, but Thomas's voice was a jarring contrast to the serenity she sought. "I really wish they'd manage these flights better. A little warning would be nice," he continued, his tone growing louder. Trying to maintain her composure, Lara responded with a quiet steadiness. "Turbulence is pretty common. It's just the wind currents. The pilots are doing their best up there." Her words were meant to soothe both Thomas and herself, a reminder of the normalcy of their situation despite the discomfort. Thomas scoffed, shaking his head. "Well, they could at least try to avoid it, don't you think?" His retort was sharp, cutting through the low hum of conversation and the whir of the engines. Before Lara could craft another response, the plane dipped suddenly, a swift drop that sent a collective gasp throughout the cabin. Laura's stomach churned with the sudden movement, her grip tightening on the armrest. Thomas cursed under his breath, his earlier bravado replaced by a flash of fear in his eyes. As the plane steadied, the captain's voice came over the intercom, calm and reassuring. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've hit a bit of unexpected turbulence. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We anticipate this will pass shortly. Thank you for your cooperation." The announcement seemed to settle the nerves of many passengers, but Thomas muttered another complaint. "Great, just what we needed. Are you okay?" he asked Laura, his tone softer now, perhaps a touch of genuine concern peeking through his earlier antagonism. Laura nodded, managing a small smile. "Yes, thank you. It's just a bit unsettling." "I suppose," Thomas conceded, looking away, his gaze fixed on the seat in front of him. The rest of the flight promised to be equally bumpy, both in the air and between the mismatched seatmates. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the evening progressed, casting long shadows across the aisles. Lara tried to distract herself by resuming the documentary, the voices and stories of strangers offering a temporary escape. Her thoughts, however, were interrupted not just by the physical jolts of the aircraft, but also by the emotional turbulence she had been weathering. The plane continued to tremble periodically, each bout of turbulence a stark reminder of the journey she had embarked upon. A journey marked by more than just geographical distance. It was a path towards new beginnings, fraught with unexpected challenges and encounters like the one with Thomas, which tested her resolve and patience. As she watched the screen, Laura felt a mix of admiration and longing as the entrepreneurs discussed overcoming obstacles and making significant impacts. Her gaze drifted back to the window, the sky now a dark canvas dotted with stars, a vast expanse that both overwhelmed and comforted her. The turbulence outside mirrored the turmoil within, each challenging her to hold on, to endure through the shakes and drops of an uncertain journey. With the plane still shuddering around her, Lara drew a deep, steadying breath, bracing herself for whatever lay ahead, both in the sky and in her life. The flight was far from over, and she knew she needed to conserve her strength for what was still to come. As the documentary neared its end, Lara's thoughts lingered on the possibilities that awaited at her destination, the hope of new starts mingling with the fear of the unknown. As the plane steadied once more, Lara, grateful for the respite from the turbulence, turned her attention back to the documentary that flickered on the small screen embedded in the seat in front of her. The voices of innovative thinkers filled the cabin, a soothing balm to the earlier chaos. The documentary showcased a series of entrepreneurs whose groundbreaking work had remained largely unknown to the public, their identities obscured, but their impacts profound. One figure in particular caught Lara's interest, a philanthropist who, despite his considerable influence and financial success, chose to stay out of the limelight. The documentary highlighted his efforts in various global initiatives, from clean water projects in developing countries to innovative education programs in underserved communities. His philosophy was simple, yet profound. True success was measured not by what one accumulated, but by what one contributed back to the world. As the narrator delved deeper into the philanthropist's story, Lara leaned closer, her eyes fixed on the images of children receiving books and clean water flowing from newly installed pumps. His approach to philanthropy is not just about donations, but about sustainable change, the narrator explained, his voice rich with admiration. Intrigued, Lara whispered to herself, "Who is this person? Why choose anonymity in an age where everyone seeks recognition?" Her musings were interrupted by a voice from beside her. Thomas, who had been notably quiet since the last bout of turbulence, glanced at the screen with a raised eyebrow. "You seem quite taken with this mystery man," he remarked, a hint of curiosity breaking through his earlier annoyance. Lara turned to him, surprised by his interest. "Yes, it's inspiring to see someone so dedicated to real change. It makes you think about the actual impact of wealth and influence." Thomas nodded, his expression thoughtful. "True, though I always wonder what drives people like him. Is it guilt, passion, or a search for meaning?" His tone was skeptical, yet intrigued. "It seems like a mix of many things," Lara responded, her eyes returning to the screen. "But whatever his reasons, the outcomes are what matter. He's making a difference. Thomas hummed in agreement, his gaze lingering on the screen before he shifted in his seat, settling back with a more contemplative air than before. Maybe you're right. Perhaps the why isn't as important as the what. The conversation lulled as the documentary showcased a recent project initiated by the philanthropist, a tech hub for young innovators in a remote part of Asia. Lara watched as teenagers, bright-eyed and eager, demonstrated their newly developed apps and robots. The philanthropist's voice, altered to preserve his anonymity, filled the cabin. My goal is not to create dependency, but to spark innovation. Each community can teach us something invaluable. We just need to provide the tools for them to share their insights with the world. Moved by his words, Lara felt a renewed sense of purpose stirring within her. Here she was, on her way to a new start, perhaps not unlike the fresh starts the philanthropist facilitated for others. The thought brought a slight smile to her face, a contrast to the worry lines that had marked her expression earlier. As the documentary neared its conclusion, Lara's thoughts were interrupted by a slight shudder running through the plane. She glanced out the window, noting that the skies seemed clear, yet the earlier turbulence had left a residue of apprehension. Turning her attention back to the screen, she resolved to focus on the positive, the stories of change and hope that the philanthropist embodied. The screen transitioned to a final quote from the philanthropist, a call to action for anyone watching. We all have the capacity to be catalysts for change, in big ways and small. It starts with a choice to not just exist, but to impact. As Lara absorbed these words, her thoughts briefly touched upon her own capabilities, her own potential impact. With the documentary concluding, she felt a gentle pull of inspiration, a quiet determination to embrace the changes ahead, just as the plane began its descent towards her new life. As the documentary faded to black and the screen before Lara blinked back to the flight menu, a sense of quiet empowerment settled over her. Yet the tranquility of the moment was short-lived. The cabin, previously a bubble of subdued noises, murmurs of conversation, the occasional laugh, the soft snoring of a tired traveler, was abruptly pierced by a sharp voice. Thomas, reinvigorated after their brief and surprisingly amicable exchange, seemed to have found a new grievance. "This is ridiculous. Can't even stretch my legs without bumping into something or someone," Thomas grumbled loudly, throwing a disdainful glance at the limited space around his seat. Lara, who had just begun to feel a surge of inspiration, felt her mood dampen. Just as she braced herself for another barrage of complaints, a new voice cut through the tension. "Young man, your legs are hardly the issue here, don't you think?" The voice was tinged with a stern yet playful rebuke. Both Lara and Thomas turned their heads toward the source, an elderly woman seated across the aisle. She was petite, with silver hair cut into a stylish bob, and her eyes sparkled with an unspoken challenge. Thomas, taken aback by the interruption, blinked in surprise. "Excuse me?" The elderly woman, supported by a cane that lay across her lap, continued undeterred. "It's quite simple. We all have to make do with the space we're given. Complaining about it doesn't make it larger, it just makes the journey unpleasant for everyone else." Lara watched, a mixture of gratitude and awe coloring her expression. The woman's tone was not unkind, but it carried a weight that commanded attention. Thomas, visibly struggling between annoyance and respect, finally nodded. "Fair point," he conceded grudgingly. The woman turned her attention to Lara, offering a warm smile. "And you, dear, shouldn't let grumpy seatmates steal your peace. We're all headed the same direction. Might as well try to enjoy the ride." Lara returned the smile, her spirits lifting. "Thank you, I appreciate it. It's been a bit of a rough flight." "Ah, but rough flights make for good stories," the woman replied with a wink. "My name is Evelyn, by the way." Lara responded, her voice infused with newfound warmth. "Thank you, Evelyn." Evelyn nodded sagely. "We women must stick together, especially in confined spaces like these." The conversation marked a shift in the atmosphere around their seats. Thomas seemed to sink back, subdued by Evelyn's words, and Lara felt a camaraderie with her unexpected ally. The rest of the cabin continued its routine. Flight attendants moving up and down the aisles, the distant sound of a baby cooing, the periodic announcements from the cockpit. Yet in their small corner of the plane, a quiet understanding had settled. As Lara exchanged a few more words with Evelyn, sharing a laugh over the peculiarities of air travel, she felt her anxiety ebb away, replaced by a sense of community, however temporary. The plane hummed along, and outside the windows, the clouds formed a soft, endless landscape, a reminder of the vast world waiting beyond the confines of their current troubles. Evelyn's presence and her timely intervention reminded Lara of the strength found in unexpected places, a theme that resonated deeply with the stories of the philanthropist she had just watched. Inspired by Evelyn's straightforward wisdom, Lara decided to soak in the remaining hours of the flight, gathering stories and lessons from those around her, ready to face whatever lay ahead once they landed. As the plane began its gradual descent, signaling the approach to their destination, Lara felt a chapter closing and another about to begin. The descent brought with it a mix of anticipation and readiness, a culmination of all the small yet significant interactions of the flight. As the captain announced their final descent, the cabin filled with the sound of seatbelts clicking and overhead compartments being cautiously opened and closed. Lara took a deep breath, steeling herself for the end of the flight, a journey that had proven more emotionally turbulent than she had anticipated. Outside the window, the landscape began to shift, the cloud cover breaking up to reveal the sprawling cityscape below, dotted with lights that twinkled like distant stars. Thomas, now visibly more subdued than earlier, shifted in his seat, gathering his belongings with a certain quietness that was uncharacteristic of the man who had boarded the flight hours earlier. Lara noticed the change, but kept her thoughts to herself, focusing instead on gathering her own items, a well-worn book, her travel pillow, and a small bag of essentials. As the plane touched down, the gentle thud reverberating through the structure, a collective sigh of relief swept through the cabin. Passengers began to stir, preparing to disembark and stretch their legs after the long confinement. Lara watched as Thomas stood up, pulling his suitcase from the overhead bin with a grunt. He glanced down at her, and for a moment, she braced for another snide remark. Instead, he nodded, a gesture that held a trace of respect, or perhaps apology. "Safe travels," he muttered, almost inaudibly. "Thank you, same to you," Lara replied, her voice steady and polite. There was no warmth in the exchange, but there was a mutual acknowledgement of the journey they had shared, however fraught it might have been. With the aisle slowly clearing, Lara waited for her turn, feeling the weight of fatigue pulling at her limbs. Her pregnancy made the discomfort more pronounced, and she longed to stretch and walk without the confines of the narrow airplane aisle. As she finally stood, smoothing her maternity dress and adjusting her bag over her shoulder, she felt a small sense of accomplishment. The flight was over, and with it, the immediate challenges it had presented. She stepped into the aisle, moving with care towards the front of the plane, each step bringing her closer to the exit and to the new life awaiting her. Evelyn, who had been a beacon of support during the flight, caught up with her, placing a gentle hand on her arm. "You did wonderfully, dear," she said, her voice as comforting as it had been during their mid-flight conversation. Lara smiled, grateful for the kindness. "Thank you, Evelyn. It was certainly an interesting flight." "Life's like that sometimes. Unexpected turbulence and unexpected allies," Evelyn chuckled, her eyes crinkling with humor. They moved slowly towards the front of the plane, the line of passengers gradually thinning as people stepped into the airport and onto their respective journeys. Lara felt the plane's door looming ahead, the threshold between her past and her future. As she passed through first class on her way out, she caught sight of a familiar figure, an elegantly dressed man who was assisting another passenger with their luggage. His movements were graceful, his demeanor kind. As he turned, his eyes met Lara's, and a flicker of recognition passed between them. The man was none other than the CEO of the airline, a detail Lara knew from the countless news articles and interviews she had seen. But there was something more, a sense of familiarity that went beyond her knowledge of his public persona. He smiled, stepping towards her as the last few passengers disembarked. "Miss, let me help you with that," he offered, reaching for her bag. "Thank you," Lara said, surprised by the unexpected encounter but grateful for the assistance. Their brief exchange at the airplane door marked the end of her journey, but also the beginning of something new. something potentially transformative. As she stepped off the plane, her heart was heavy with the weight of recent changes, but also light with the possibility of what might come next. Lara stepped off the plane, the cold air of the jet bridge, a sharp contrast to the stuffy cabin she had just left behind. The terminal was bustling, passengers streaming past her in their rush to reach their next destinations. Holding her small carry-on bag closely, she felt the exhaustion of the flight weighing down on her. Her other bag, slightly heavier and cumbersome, slipped from her shoulder, prompting her to pause and readjust her grip. As she struggled with her luggage, a gentle voice called out from behind her. "Here, let me help you with that," the voice offered warmly. Lara turned, finding herself face to face with a man whose features sparked a flicker of recognition. He was the last passenger she had noticed in first class, the man whose kind demeanor had briefly caught her attention. Now, seeing him up close, she realized why he had seemed familiar. His eyes, a deep, insightful blue, were the same ones that had looked out from the documentary she had watched on the plane. This was Gabriel, the CEO of the airline, and the anonymous philanthropist whose stories of kindness and innovation had captivated her. "Thank you," Lara said, feeling a mix of surprise and relief as he took the heavier bag from her. "I appreciate it." "It's no trouble at all," Gabriel replied, his smile easy and genuine. "It's part of our service, after all, to make sure all our passengers feel looked after, even beyond the flight." They walked together toward the baggage claim area, the noise of the bustling airport around them. Lara was acutely aware of the presence of this man who, until a few hours ago, had been just another face in a documentary. Now, here he was, in flesh and blood, carrying her bag as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Gabriel seemed to sense her curiosity because he glanced over and chuckled softly. "I suppose it's not every day you get help with your luggage from the CEO of the airline," he said, his voice light with humor. Lara smiled, her initial reserve melting away. "No, it's not, and it's not every day that someone meets a philanthropist who prefers to remain anonymous," she replied, her tone both respectful and inquisitive. Gabriel's expression turned thoughtful. "Anonymity has its perks," he admitted. "It allows me to focus on the work rather than on personal accolades. But sometimes, it's nice to step out from behind the curtain." As they reached the baggage claim, Gabriel helped place her luggage on the ground. "So what brings you to Amsterdam?" he inquired, genuinely interested. "I'm here to start over," Lara shared, the truth of her words ringing loud in her ears. "After some personal changes, I thought a new place might give me a fresh perspective." "That sounds like a brave decision," Gabriel observed, his gaze meeting hers with an understanding that felt almost too deep. Change is never easy, but often it's the most rewarding path. Their conversation was briefly interrupted as the conveyor belt started, bags beginning to appear. Lara watched for her suitcase, but her mind was partially on the man beside her, his story, and the uncanny way fate seemed to have thrown them together. "Here's your suitcase," Gabriel said, pulling a large bag from the belt and setting it beside her. "It looks like you're all set." Lara nodded, feeling a strange reluctance for the encounter to end. "Thank you, Gabriel, for everything. I didn't expect my journey to begin quite like this." Gabriel smiled, a look of contemplation in his eyes. "Maybe it's the perfect start. Sometimes the unexpected paths lead us to exactly where we need to be." He handed her a business card. "If you need anything while you're here or just want to discuss potential opportunities, give me a call. It was more than a pleasure to help." Lara accepted the card, a sense of wonder settling over her. "I just might take you up on that," she said, her voice steady despite the flutter of excitement in her chest. As Gabriel nodded and turned to leave, Lara watched him go, her heart a mixture of anticipation and hope. She gathered her bags, the weight of them now seeming a little less burdensome, ready to face the new life awaiting her. As she turned toward the exit, her steps felt lighter, her spirit buoyed by the serendipitous meeting that might just have changed the course of her journey. The brisk air of Amsterdam greeted Lara as she exited the airport, the weight of her bags now a comforting reminder of her new beginning. Her mind replayed the unexpected meeting with Gabriel, the CEO who had effortlessly transitioned from a helpful stranger to a potential beacon in her fresh start. Just as she considered hailing a taxi, her phone vibrated with a new message. It was from Gabriel. "If you're not too tired, I'd love to treat you to a coffee. There's a nice place not far from here where we can talk more comfortably." Lara hesitated for a moment, the offer both intriguing and slightly overwhelming. Deciding that the opportunity was too unique to pass up, she typed a quick reply agreeing to meet him and received directions to a quaint cafe nestled between the vibrant rows of shops and houses characteristic of the city. The cafe was a warm, inviting space with walls lined with books and small, cozy tables that offered privacy and comfort. Gabriel was already there, seated at a corner table with 2 coffees waiting. He stood up as Lara entered, greeting her with a smile that eased her initial nerves. "I hope you don't mind that I ordered for us. I remember you had a long flight," Gabriel said, motioning towards the steaming cups. "Not at all, thank you. It smells wonderful," Lara replied, taking a seat and wrapping her hands around the warm cup. The rich aroma of the coffee was grounding, and the bustling sound of the cafe offered a pleasant backdrop to their conversation. "I wanted to apologize personally for the discomfort during your flight," Gabriel began, his tone earnest. "It's not the experience we want to give our passengers." Lara sipped her coffee, appreciating his concern. "Thank you, Gabriel. It means a lot that you care. It was an unusual flight, but it ended on a high note," she said with a slight smile, referring to their unexpected meeting. Gabriel returned her smile, then his expression turned thoughtful. "Speaking of high notes, I've been thinking about our conversation earlier. You mentioned starting anew here in Amsterdam. It so happens that I'm involved in a project that might align with your new beginning." Oh, Lara's interest was piqued, her coffee momentarily forgotten. "Yes, it's a social enterprise designed to integrate and empower women through skill development and employment opportunities. It's based right here in the city, and we're looking for someone to help lead the initiative, someone with fresh perspectives and a drive to make a real impact." Lara was taken aback. The project sounded like something deeply aligned with her own desires to contribute and rebuild her life in a meaningful way. "That sounds incredible," she managed, her mind racing with the possibilities. "I thought it might resonate with you," Gabriel said, watching her reaction closely. "I know it's a lot to consider, especially just after your arrival, but I believe you could be a perfect fit. You have a spirit of resilience that's essential for this role." Lara considered the offer, the warmth of the cafe and the sincerity in Gabriel's eyes making the proposal seem like a twist of fate she hadn't anticipated but might deeply need. "I'm honored, Gabriel. I would love to learn more about it," Lara responded, the decision feeling surprisingly right. "Excellent," Gabriel said, his relief evident. "I can show you the facilities tomorrow, introduce you to the team. We can take it from there." As they continued to talk, the details of the project unfolding, Lara felt a growing sense of excitement, a contrast to the uncertainty that had clouded her thoughts since her divorce. Here, in this new city, with this unexpected opportunity, perhaps she could truly start anew. Their meeting extended beyond just coffee, as they discussed potential strategies and outcomes for the project. By the time they parted ways, the sun had begun to set, casting a golden glow over the city. Lara walked back to her temporary accommodation, her steps lighter than they had been in months, her heart full of potential. As she settled in for the night, her thoughts were on the future, on the project and its challenges, and on the unexpected ally she had found in Gabriel. Tomorrow would be a significant day, she knew, as she drifted off to sleep with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. The morning after her enlightening meeting with Gabriel, Lara stepped out into the crisp Amsterdam air, her spirits lifted by the prospects of her new role. The city, with its meandering canals and bustling cafes, seemed to embrace her, its vibrancy a sharp contrast to the emotional turbulence she had left behind on the flight. She was on her way to meet Gabriel at the project site when her phone buzzed with an unexpected message. It was from Thomas. She paused on a quaint bridge, overlooking a canal lined with colorful boats, to read the text. "Lara, this is Thomas from the flight. I've been thinking about my behavior and I owe you an apology. Can we meet? I would like to explain myself and apologize properly." Lara stared at the message, her initial surprise slowly morphing into contemplation. She remembered the distress Thomas's comments had caused her, but also the human capacity for change. Typing a cautious reply, she agreed to meet him at a cafe nearby, curious about what had prompted his change of heart. They met outside the cafe, the morning rush filling the space with the clatter of dishes and the murmur of conversations. Thomas stood there, noticeably uneasy, his usual assertiveness replaced by a more subdued demeanor. "Lara, thank you for meeting me," he began, his voice sincere. "I've spent the night thinking about how I acted on the plane. It was inexcusable, and I am truly sorry for the discomfort I caused you." Lara nodded, acknowledging his apology, but maintaining a composed reserve. "Thank you for saying that, Thomas. It was a difficult flight for me, and your words added to that stress." Thomas winced, the impact of his actions clearly hitting home. "I can imagine," he admitted. "Sometimes I don't realize the effect my words have until it's too late. I've been dealing with some personal issues, and I unfairly let that influence my behavior towards you." Lara sipped her coffee, considering his words. The cafe around them buzzed with the energy of the city, a reminder of the world moving forward. "We all have our moments, Thomas. I appreciate your apology. It shows courage to admit your mistakes." Thomas looked relieved at her words, a tension easing from his shoulders. "I hope you can forgive me, Lara. I would understand if you'd rather not interact further, but I felt it was important to apologize directly." "I accept your apology, Thomas, and I hope you find peace with whatever is troubling you," Lara responded, her tone kind yet firm. She was ready to close this chapter and focus on the new opportunities ahead. They parted shortly after, the brief meeting concluding on a note of mutual understanding. Lara left the cafe with a sense of closure, ready to immerse herself in the project that awaited her. As she walked to the project site, her thoughts were on the power of new beginnings and second chances, not just for her but for others like Thomas. Perhaps, she mused, change was possible for everyone, with the right catalyst. Arriving at the site, she was greeted by Gabriel, who was waiting with a bright smile and open arms. "Ready to start a new chapter?" he asked, his enthusiasm infectious. Lara nodded, her heart full of hope. "Absolutely," she replied, stepping into the building that would be her new workspace, her steps light and determined. The challenges of yesterday were behind her, and today offered a canvas of possibilities. The workspace was a vibrant hub of activity, located in a refurbished warehouse with large, sunlit windows and walls adorned with inspiring quotes and artwork. Gabriel led Lara through the bustling open-plan office, introducing her to team members whose faces lit up with welcome. Their enthusiasm was palpable, making Lara feel instantly part of something significant and transformative. As they walked, Gabriel filled her in on the various projects underway. "We've got teams working on everything from educational programs for local children to job training for immigrants. Your role will be pivotal in expanding these initiatives, especially focusing on women's empowerment." Lara listened, her excitement growing with every detail. The energy of the place was infectious, a creative and dynamic environment that seemed like the perfect setting for her new beginning. After the tour, Gabriel invited Lara to a small, quiet corner of the office, outfitted with comfortable chairs and green plants, a stark contrast to the industrial feel of the rest of the space. "I thought we'd sit here for a bit," he said, handing her a freshly brewed cup of coffee. "It's important to me that you feel fully supported here, not just professionally but personally, especially with your baby on the way." Lara took a sip of the coffee, feeling warmed by the drink and Gabriel's considerate nature. "Thank you, Gabriel. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this opportunity and your support. It's more than I could have hoped for when I decided to move here." Gabriel smiled, his demeanor both professional and genuinely caring. "I believe in giving people the tools they need to succeed, Lara. You have incredible potential, and I want to make sure you have everything you need to meet it." Their conversation turned to practical matters, with Gabriel outlining the flexible working arrangements they could provide, which would allow Lara to balance her professional responsibilities with her health and well-being as a new mother. "We also have a great network of childcare facilities we partner with, and we can set up a nursery here in the office if that helps," he added, showing a level of empathy that was both rare and invaluable. Lara was touched by his thoughtfulness. "That sounds amazing, Gabriel. I'm truly grateful." As they continued to talk, Lara felt a profound sense of relief and optimism. Here was someone who not only respected her professional abilities, but also acknowledged and supported her personal journey. Their meeting concluded with Gabriel giving Lara some documents to review, detailing her role and the projects she would be leading. "Take your time going through these. I want you to feel fully prepared and confident in your position here," he advised. Lara left the office that day with a spring in her step, her mind buzzing with ideas and possibilities. The support and trust Gabriel had shown her were more than she had dared hope for, making the challenges ahead seem all the more surmountable. As she made her way home, reflecting on the day's events, Lara felt a deepening bond with Gabriel, not just as a boss, but as a mentor and friend. A relationship she knew would be crucial in the days to come. Her thoughts were interrupted by a call from Evelyn, the elderly woman from the plane who had defended her against Thomas. Evelyn's warm, cheerful voice came through the speaker. "Hello, dear. I just wanted to check in and see how you're settling in. How was your first day?" Lara smiled, grateful for the connection. "It was wonderful, Evelyn. I think I'm going to like it here a lot." "That's fantastic to hear," Evelyn replied. "Remember, if you need anything or just want some company, I'm just a call away." "Thank you, Evelyn. I might take you up on that soon," Lara responded, her heart full of gratitude for the new friendships and opportunities unfolding before her. As she ended the call, she looked around at her new city, feeling a sense of belonging that she hadn't felt in a long time. With each step, each new connection, she was weaving herself into the fabric of her new life, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The crisp morning air was filled with the bustling sounds of Amsterdam as Lara prepared for her prenatal appointment. The city, with its intricate web of canals and vibrant street life, seemed to pulse with energy, a stark contrast to the calm interior of her apartment where she gathered her things. Today was significant, not just because of the routine checkup, but because Gabriel had offered to accompany her, deepening the sense of support and friendship that had begun to form between them. As she stepped outside, Gabriel was already waiting, his presence a reassuring constant in her whirlwind of changes. He greeted her with a warm smile, holding the car door open for her. "Ready for the appointment?" he asked, his tone both casual and genuinely concerned. "Yes, thanks to you," Lara replied, settling into the seat. The drive to the clinic was short, but the time allowed them to talk about non-work-related matters, weaving a richer tapestry of their burgeoning friendship. At the clinic, Gabriel's demeanor was attentive but unobtrusive, striking a perfect balance between supportiveness and respect for her privacy. As they waited in the reception area, Lara shared more about her hopes for motherhood, her voice mingling with the soft background hum of the clinic. "I appreciate you being here, Gabriel. It's not just the company, but knowing I have someone in my corner," Lara expressed, her eyes reflecting gratitude. "It's my pleasure, Lara. I believe support is crucial at times like these. You're not just building a career with us, you're building a life here," Gabriel responded, his words thoughtful and measured. When the nurse called Lara's name, Gabriel rose with her, but at the entrance to the examination room, he paused. "I'll be right here if you need anything," he said, giving her a reassuring nod. The appointment itself was routine, but for Lara, each visit was a milestone, a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation about the health and progress of her baby. The doctor was thorough, answering her questions with a professionalism that eased her concerns. Afterward, Lara emerged to find Gabriel waiting with a small bouquet of flowers, simple yet thoughtful. "How did everything go?" he asked, as they walked back to the car. "Very well, thank you. And these are lovely," Lara smiled, touching the petals gently. "You didn't have to." "I know, but I wanted to," Gabriel replied, his smile easy and genuine. Their conversation on the drive back meandered from plans for the nursery to discussions about upcoming projects at work. Gabriel listened intently, his advice always measured and insightful, helping Lara navigate both the personal and professional landscapes she was traversing. As they neared her apartment, Lara felt a mix of appreciation and wonder at the unexpected friendship that had blossomed between them. Gabriel, thank you, really. Not just for today, but for all of it. I feel very fortunate to have met you. Gabriel's response was warm, tinged with respect. The feeling is mutual, Lara. I'm here whenever you need guidance or just a friend. They parted with a promise to meet soon, both for work and perhaps another checkup. As Lara watched Gabriel drive away, she felt anchored in a way that was new to her, a network of support that was both professional and personal, providing a foundation for her new life. That evening, Lara sat by her window, journal in hand, reflecting on the day. Her entries were filled with observations and gratitude, each word a testament to the newfound stability and friendships in her life. As she wrote, her thoughts drifted to her next appointment, already feeling less daunting with the knowledge that she wouldn't be facing it alone. The weeks had slipped by with a blend of anticipation and preparation, each day bringing Lara closer to a moment that would redefine her life. The nursery was ready, painted in soft pastels, filled with tiny clothes and toys, all waiting for the new arrival. Lara, now in the final days of her pregnancy, felt a mix of nerves and excitement, the natural anxieties of impending motherhood, tempered by the support of those around her, particularly Gabriel. It was in the quiet of a late night when the first contractions began, gentle at first, then gradually insisting with more urgency. Lara knew it was time. She called Gabriel, her voice steady despite the pain. "It's happening," she said simply. "I'll be right there," Gabriel responded immediately, his voice a calming presence in the whirl of her escalating nerves. By the time Lara was admitted to the maternity ward, Gabriel was by her side, his presence a comforting constant as the hospital room became the center of a rapidly unfolding drama. Nurses moved efficiently, preparing for the birth, their professional calm a soothing balm against the intensity of the moment. As the contractions grew closer together, Lara's focus narrowed to the essential act of breathing, each breath a lifeline as she rode the waves of pain. Gabriel was there throughout, holding her hand, offering words of encouragement. "You're doing wonderfully, Lara. Just a little longer," he murmured during a particularly intense contraction. Lara, gripping his hand, found strength in his presence. His support was not just physical but emotional, a pillar in the storm of her labor. The hours passed, a blur of pain, encouragement, and profound effort, until, with one final, determined push, Lara brought a new life into the world. The cry of her newborn daughter cut through the fatigue, a sharp, vital sound that heralded a profound joy. "It's a girl," announced the doctor as the baby was gently placed into Lara's arms. Gabriel, standing beside her, witnessed the moment with a mix of awe and joy. Tears glistened in his eyes as he looked at Lara and her daughter. "She's beautiful, Lara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She is," Lara agreed, her exhaustion forgotten in the flood of maternal love that filled her as she cradled her daughter. The baby, with her tiny fists and soft, fluttering eyelids, seemed perfect, a miracle made real. As they were left alone for a few moments, Gabriel leaned in, his gaze tender. "You were incredible," he whispered. Lara smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude not just for the healthy arrival of her daughter, but for the friendship that had sustained her through it all. "Thank you, Gabriel, for being here, for everything," she said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "It's been my honor, Lara," Gabriel replied, his hand gently touching the baby's head. "Welcome to the world, little one." In the quiet that followed, as mother and daughter bonded in the soft light of the hospital room, Lara felt a peace settle over her. The journey to this point had been filled with so many uncertainties, but now, holding her daughter, she felt a new chapter beginning, a chapter filled with promise and love. As the night turned into early morning, Lara watched the sunrise from her hospital window, her daughter asleep in her arms. The world outside seemed to pause, a quiet acknowledgement of the life that had just begun. Gabriel, sitting quietly beside them, shared in the moment, his presence a silent vow of continued friendship and support. The days following the birth of Lara's daughter were a whirlwind of new routines, midnight feedings, and joyful discoveries. Each day brought a new facet of her daughter's personality into the light, and Lara, though exhausted, felt a profound sense of fulfillment. It was during one of these early days that Gabriel came to visit, bearing not just gifts, but a presence that had become a cornerstone of Lara's new life in Amsterdam. When Gabriel arrived at Lara's home, The soft chime of the doorbell echoed through the quiet of the afternoon. Lara, holding her daughter who was gently dozing, answered the door to find Gabriel standing with a large, soft teddy bear and a bouquet of flowers. "Welcome," Lara greeted, her smile tired but genuine as she stepped aside to let him in. "Thank you," Gabriel replied, stepping into the warm, light-filled living room. He handed her the flowers first, a vibrant mix of colors that brightened the already cozy room. "These are for you, and this," he said, presenting the teddy bear, "is for the little one." Lara laughed softly, the sound mingling with the gentle cooing of her daughter. "She's going to love it. Thank you, Gabriel. And the flowers are beautiful." As they settled into the comfortable sofas, the baby stirred slightly in Lara's arms, her tiny hands reaching out as if aware of the new presence. Gabriel watched with a tender curiosity that reflected his deepening affection for both Lara and her daughter. "It's incredible, isn't it? How quickly they seem to take in the world around them," Gabriel mused, his voice soft. "It really is," Lara agreed, her eyes on her daughter. "Every day, she seems to discover something new." Their conversation flowed naturally from the baby's developments to other aspects of their lives. Gabriel shared updates about the ongoing projects at the social enterprise, including new initiatives they were planning, which Lara was eager to contribute to as soon as she was able. "And how about you, Gabriel? How's everything outside of work?" Lara inquired, genuinely interested in learning more about him beyond the professional sphere. Gabriel paused, his gaze reflective. "It's been busy but good. I've been thinking a lot about the future, about legacy and impact. Having you and your daughter here, seeing the direct effect of our work, it's inspiring. It makes me want to push harder, do more." Lara nodded, understanding the drive. "It's the same for me. She's changed everything, made me think about what I want to teach her, the world I want her to grow up in." As they spoke, the baby began to fuss lightly, and Lara gently rocked her, soothing her back into tranquility. Gabriel watched this, a smile playing on his lips. "You're a natural at this," he commented, his tone admiring. "Thanks," Lara said, feeling a warm glow at his compliment. "I guess it comes with the territory. She makes it easy." Their conversation deepened, weaving through personal challenges and triumphs, discussing aspirations and the paths they hoped to pave. It was during these moments that Lara felt their bond strengthening, not just through shared goals, but through shared values and mutual respect. As the visit drew to a close, Gabriel stood to leave, but not before looking once more at the baby, who was now soundly asleep in Lara's arms. "She's going to be amazing, Lara, just like her mother." "Thank you, Gabriel. That means a lot coming from you," Lara responded, her voice tinged with gratitude. Gabriel nodded, his eyes warm. "I'll let you get back to it. But remember, if you need anything, I'm just a phone call away." As he left, Lara felt not just the support of a friend, but the presence of family in this new land. She looked down at her daughter, her heart full, knowing that their future was bright, with people like Gabriel by their side. A few weeks after Gabriel's visit, as autumn painted the city in hues of orange and gold, Lara felt more settled, her life rhythms attuned to the needs of her growing daughter. It was on one of these crisp autumn mornings, when the air was filled with the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke, that Gabriel returned to Lara's home for a scheduled visit. His arrival was timed perfectly with the baby's nap, allowing them a quiet space for conversation. Lara welcomed him with a warm smile, leading him to the living room where they both settled into the comfortable couches draped with soft throws. After some initial pleasantries and an update on the baby's progress, Gabriel's demeanor shifted subtly, becoming more serious, almost hesitant. "Lara, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you," Gabriel began, his hands clasped together, betraying a rare nervousness. "It's about how we first met and why." Lara, sensing the importance of the moment, nodded encouragingly. "What about it, Gabriel?" Gabriel took a deep breath, his gaze meeting hers steadily. "When we met on the plane, it wasn't entirely coincidental. I knew who you were because your sister had asked me to keep an eye out for you." Lara's eyes widened in surprise. "My sister?" she echoed, a mixture of confusion and curiosity threading through her voice. "Yes," Gabriel continued, his voice calm but earnest. "She and I have been colleagues for years, working on several projects together through the airline's charity initiatives. When she learned you were moving to Amsterdam, she asked me if I could help make your transition easier. Lara sat back, processing the revelation. The idea that her sister had orchestrated such a pivotal connection unbeknownst to her brought a swirl of emotions. Surprise, gratitude, and a slight sense of betrayal for not being in the loop. "Why didn't she tell me?" Lara asked, her voice a mix of wonder and mild reproach. "She wanted to, but she was worried it might influence your decisions or add pressure at a time when you needed freedom to choose your own path," Gabriel explained gently. "She cares about you a lot, Lara. She wanted to ensure you had support here, without making you feel watched over." Lara absorbed his words, the initial shock giving way to an understanding of her sister's intentions. "I can see why she did it, and I appreciate both of your concerns," she acknowledged, her heart warming with the realization of her sister's quiet support through Gabriel. Gabriel nodded, relieved at her response. "I hope this doesn't change things between us," he added, a hint of concern lacing his words. Lara shook her head, her smile returning. "No, not at all. If anything, it makes me appreciate our friendship even more. Thank you, Gabriel, for being there, even before I knew I needed someone." The air cleared with her words, and the conversation moved on, deepening their bond as they discussed future plans for Lara's involvement in the social projects that Gabriel spearheaded. As the morning waned into afternoon with light filtering softly through the curtains, Lara felt a profound sense of connection, not just to her new life in Amsterdam, but also to the family she had both near and far. As Gabriel prepared to leave, promising to return soon, Lara felt anchored and supported in ways she hadn't anticipated, but deeply valued. She watched him go, her thoughts turning to her sister, planning to call her and express her newfound gratitude for the unseen threads she had woven to keep Lara supported and loved from afar. In the weeks following their deep conversation and the revelations that came with it, Lara found herself reflecting on the intricate ways their lives had intertwined. Her trust and respect for Gabriel had grown, solidified by his transparency and the shared commitment to making positive changes in the community. On a breezy Saturday morning, as golden leaves danced playfully along the pathways of a nearby park, Gabriel and Lara met for a stroll. Lara's daughter, snug in her stroller, gazed curiously at the world around her, her little hands reaching out towards the fluttering leaves. They found a quiet bench by a serene pond, where ducks glided gracefully across the water, their movements creating ripples that spread wide and disappeared into the calm edges. "Lara, I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation," Gabriel began, watching the ducks, "about family, support, and the roles we choose in each other's lives." He paused, choosing his words with care. "I've come to see you and your daughter not just as friends, but as family, and I'd like to be more involved if you're open to it." Lara turned to him, surprise etched on her face, mixed with a dawning sense of what his words might mean. "Gabriel, what exactly are you suggesting?" Gabriel met her gaze, his expression earnest. "I'd like to be a part of her life, Lara, not just as a mentor or friend, but as a godfather, if you would allow me. I want to help provide for her, be there for her milestones, support her as she grows." The offer hung in the air, profound and sincere. Lara felt a wave of emotions, gratitude, relief, and a deep resonance with the idea. Gabriel had been a steadfast presence in her life, showing a commitment that went beyond casual friendship or professional courtesy. His proposal felt like a natural extension of the bond they had cultivated. "Gabriel, that's an incredibly generous offer," Lara responded, her voice thick with emotion. "To think of you as her godfather, knowing the kind of man you are, the values you stand by, it would mean the world to us." Gabriel's face lit up with a genuine smile, his relief palpable. "I'm honored, Lara, truly. I don't have children of my own, and I feel like it's a meaningful way to extend the love and resources I have." Lara nodded, her heart full. "It's not just an extension of resources, Gabriel. It's your heart, your time, your wisdom. She's lucky to have you." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as Lara's daughter cooed at the ducks, her innocent delight a sharp contrast to the depth of their adult decisions. Finally, Lara spoke up, her voice steady but soft. "Let's do this then. Let's make it official." "Thank you, Lara," Gabriel said, his voice warm. "I promise to be there for her, always." As they made their way back through the park, the decision sealed between them, Lara felt a renewed sense of security and hope. The path ahead seemed brighter, with Gabriel walking beside her, not just as a friend or a colleague, but as family. The casual stroll through the park had turned into a pivotal moment in their lives, marking a commitment that would shape the future of her daughter. As they approached the edge of the park, Lara looked over at Gabriel, her eyes reflecting the soft autumn light, grateful for the unexpected turns life had taken and the unexpected guardian it had brought into their lives. The days following Gabriel's offer to become a godfather were filled with a new sense of hope and joy for Lara. She found herself frequently reflecting on the newfound stability and support that Gabriel had promised to bring into her and her daughter's lives. It was a sunny Thursday afternoon, and Lara was tidying up the nursery, her daughter gurgling happily in her crib, when her phone rang. Expecting it might be Gabriel, as he had mentioned he would be out picking a special gift for her daughter's upcoming first birthday, Lara answered with a light heart. However, the voice on the other end was not Gabriel's, but that of his assistant, who spoke with a tremble in her voice that immediately set Lara's nerves on edge. "Lara, there's been an accident," the assistant said, her words rushed and heavy with emotion. "It's Gabriel. He was in a car crash. He didn't make it." The room seemed to spin around Lara as she gripped the phone tighter, her other hand clutching the edge of the crib for support. "What? That can't be right. Are you sure?" she stammered, her voice a mixture of disbelief and rising panic. "I'm so sorry, Lara. It's true. He passed away en route to the hospital," the assistant replied, her voice breaking with sorrow. The phone slipped slightly in Lara's grasp as her knees weakened. She sank to the floor, the reality of the news crashing down upon her like a physical weight. Gabriel, her steadfast friend and newly promised family, gone in an instant, on an errand that was meant to bring joy, not sorrow. In the days that followed, Lara moved through a fog of grief and disbelief. The world seemed dimmer, the colors less vibrant, and even the sounds around her felt muffled and distant. She attended Gabriel's funeral with her daughter in her arms, the solemnity of the ceremony amplifying the ache in her heart. Friends and colleagues spoke of Gabriel's kindness, his visionary work, and his generous spirit, each word a testament to the profound gap he left behind. At the wake, Lara spoke to many who shared her sorrow, each offering condolences and sharing their own memories of Gabriel. But the words often blurred together, none of them filling the void that his passing had left. She thanked them, her responses automatic, the ritual of mourning enveloping her in a shroud of sorrow. Returning home from the funeral, Lara found herself standing in the nursery, looking at the gifts Gabriel had given her daughter, each a symbol of a future he would never see. She picked up a small, stuffed bear he had given, a bear that her daughter often clutched tightly in her sleep, and held it to her chest, allowing herself a moment to weep, the tears a silent testament to her loss. The days turned into weeks, and though the sharpness of her grief dulled, the sadness lingered, a constant companion in her daily life. Lara found herself talking to her daughter about Gabriel, telling her about the plans they had made and the dreams he had for their future. It was her way of keeping his memory alive, of trying to make sense of a loss too great to understand fully. As she adjusted to a world without Gabriel, Lara realized she needed to find strength, not just for herself, but for her daughter, who was now looking to her for all her cues. In her heart, Lara made a silent promise to Gabriel, to continue the work they had planned, to uphold the values he had taught her, and to ensure that her daughter would always know the man who had changed their lives so profoundly. The weeks turned into months, and the sharp edges of Lara's grief began to soften, blunted by the passage of time and the persistent demands of motherhood. Her daughter, now more aware and responsive, brought a daily dose of joy and purpose that was hard to ignore. Each smile, each new word, was a balm to Lara's wounded heart, reminding her that life, despite its trials, also carried beautiful continuities. Lara found herself drawn more frequently to the community center Gabriel had helped to establish. It was a place bustling with activity, where ideas he had planted grew into initiatives that genuinely made a difference. The people there, many of whom had known and loved Gabriel, welcomed Lara and her daughter with open arms, offering not just condolences, but active support. They shared stories of Gabriel, recounting moments of his generosity and vision, which helped Lara to see not just what she had lost, but what she had been a part of, and still was. One afternoon, while at the community center, Lara sat in on a planning session for a new project, one that Gabriel had been particularly excited about. As the team discussed the steps needed to move forward, Lara felt a surge of energy. Gabriel would have wanted us to push on, to see this through, she found herself saying, her voice stronger than she had expected. "You're absolutely right, Lara," replied one of the project leads, a young woman whose respect for Gabriel was evident in her dedication. "We all admired his drive. It's up to us now to continue that legacy." Encouraged by their belief in her and bolstered by her own growing desire to see Gabriel's dreams realized, Lara became more involved. She took on a role that allowed her to manage parts of the project, applying her skills and finding new confidence in her ability to lead and inspire others. At home, Lara began to create a scrapbook for her daughter, filling it with photos and stories of Gabriel, detailing the projects they worked on and the many ways he had touched their lives. It was both a therapeutic exercise for Lara and a gift to her daughter, ensuring that the memory of Gabriel would be a tangible presence in their lives. One evening, as Lara put her daughter to bed, she read to her from a book Gabriel had bought before his passing. Her daughter listened, entranced, then reached out and placed her tiny hand on Lara's, a simple gesture filled with trust and love. Lara looked down at her daughter, her heart swelling with a mixture of sorrow and immense love. "Your godfather loved this story," Lara whispered, kissing her forehead, "and he loved us very much." It was moments like these that fortified Lara, weaving her grief into the fabric of life rather than letting it unravel her. With each passing day, she found moments of peace and healing, supported by the community, her daughter, and the enduring legacy of a friend whose influence continued to guide her. As Lara continued to engage with the community and watch her daughter grow, she realized that overcoming grief didn't mean forgetting or moving on from the memories of Gabriel. Instead, it meant carrying forward his spirit and integrating the loss into a new narrative of resilience and hope, a narrative she was still writing every day. The morning light filtered through the expansive windows of Lara's new office, casting a warm glow across the polished wooden floors and modern furnishings. The office, situated on the top floor of the community center, offered a panoramic view of the bustling city below, a city that had become her home, filled with memories, challenges, and triumphs. As Lara stood by the window, her eyes traced the skyline, her mind reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. It had been nearly 2 years since that turbulent flight that altered the course of her life, 2 years since she had landed in a new country, burdened with uncertainty, but buoyed by hope. The loss of Gabriel, profound and painful, had been a crucible, transforming her grief into a force that propelled her forward, driving her to embrace his legacy and expand upon it. Her office was now a hub of activity, the walls lined with plans and photographs of ongoing projects, each a testament to the resilience and determination of the community and herself. She had stepped into her role more fully than she had ever imagined, guided by Gabriel's vision and her own growing confidence. As Lara turned away from the window to her desk, her gaze fell on a framed photograph of Gabriel, taken during one of their many meetings. His smile was as encouraging as ever, a silent reminder of his belief in her capabilities. Below that, another frame held a picture of her and her daughter, taken just a week ago at the community park. Her daughter's joyful expression, her eyes sparkling with laughter, was a bittersweet reminder of the life Lara was building, a life forged from the depths of her loss. The soft chime of her phone brought her out of her reverie. She answered it to find Evelyn on the other end, her voice as warm and comforting as it had always been. "Lara, how are you today? I saw the newsletter. The project is really coming along." Lara smiled, her heart warmed by Evelyn's constant support. "It's going well, Evelyn. It feels like everything is finally coming together, and it's so fulfilling to see the impact we're making." "That's wonderful to hear," Evelyn replied. "Gabriel would have been so proud of you, Lara. I know I am." "Thank you, Evelyn. That means a lot to me," Lara responded, her voice thick with emotion. She paused, looking around her office, her achievements, and her ongoing projects, a landscape of her efforts and dreams. It's been a challenging journey, but I feel like I'm exactly where I need to be. That's all we can ask for, isn't it? To find our place and make a difference, Evelyn said, her voice reflective. Yes, exactly. And to think it all started with a chance encounter on a plane, Lara mused, her thoughts going back to that day, to the unlikely beginnings of her new life. Well, my dear, keep doing wonderful things. I'll let you get back to it. Let's catch up soon, all right? Sounds perfect, Evelyn. Take care, Lara said, ending the call. Turning back to the window, Lara allowed herself a moment of quiet contemplation. The city stretched out before her, alive with possibilities. Her heart felt steady, her purpose clear. With her daughter growing up in a world she was helping to shape, and a community that stood together, strong and supportive, Lara felt a profound sense of accomplishment and peace. She took a deep breath, her reflection on the glass superimposed against the sprawling cityscape, a symbol of her new life, intertwined with the legacy of a beloved friend and the vibrant community they served. Here in this space of new beginnings, Lara was not just surviving, she was thriving.
So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support and see you in the next videos.